and we've set up so many different, I think, avenues to really reach out to you. There's blogs that are on there. There's resources that we're putting up that are for free. Everybody say for free. Yeah. So they're for free. And so that you can get those on there. We're also releasing videos, video podcasts once in a while. And this is going to be one of those. We wanted to do Locker Room Live here. But also there's audio podcasts that you can find on there, also on iTunes. And we talk about some pretty cool topics. Like so far, I was just looking at some of the things we've handled. I know we talked about creating boundaries for students in youth ministry.
I love that one. That was one of my favorite topics we did.
Yeah, Tyler, it was in a youth ministry, over 100. I had the opportunity to do that as well. Just kind of, and when you have students, you have to have boundaries. And we talked a lot about that in depth, so I won't go into that just right now. We talked about the struggle is real, how to find and keep volunteers. Anybody ever have a problem keeping volunteers? I mean, that's the real deal struggle. So we spent like a whole Locker Room podcast just talking.
I love you guys
about that.
Shout out to Warehouse really quick. These 4 ladies on the front row, whenever I was a student pastor, ran things. So if you guys want to know how to have effective volunteers, talk to them. They made my job so easy whenever I was a youth pastor. Literally all I had to do was show up and speak, and they did everything else. They were the youth pastors, and I was like the silly guy on stage. It was awesome. And they're awesome. They know everything.
So we've hit a lot of topics, and
love you guys.
And we're continuing to do that, trying to keep it fresh. So I hope that you'll check it out if you haven't already. Has anybody listened to the Locker Room podcast? Anybody out there? Okay, all right.
Awesome.
I was expecting like nobody to raise their hands.
Bet you don't know this. Like average, like when we put something out, we have a hit like between 600 and 850.
Awesome.
People. Like, yeah, it's awesome.
That's great.
That's
including though my mom and my wife and
dog.
My dog. Yes, Macy does know how to use the computer. But today what we want to do is we want to do an episode live. So we want to do it with you guys. So we're going to talk a little bit about some struggles in youth ministry. But also what we want to do is we want to spend some time in Q&A because I know that always seems to take off at NYC and some of our leader breakouts, a time of Q&A where you can ask questions and we can try to answer them. But a lot of times what happens is some of the really great answers end up coming from the floor as well. Other people who have been in the same spot, doing the same thing, and maybe find a breakthrough somewhere or another. So we hope that you'll be equipped and resourced for maximum impact in your community through this time together. So are we all set, Todd? We're good to go? So
awesome.
I'm going to clear my throat about 14 times, and then we'll go ahead and start today. Tyler, anything else you want to say before we get rolling?
Do not clear your throat in the microphone, please. Hey, love you guys, and excited to about to film something live for you guys. There's a lot of camera angles, so I think we're good. Yeah.
You're good. Go ahead.
Yeah. Also, you can tweet in questions if you don't want to be outspoken. Just use the hashtag GBNYC, and we'll catch it. I got my phone going, so if you're like, I don't really want to raise my hand and ask questions, okay, we'll catch it on Twitter. So
this angle right here is my favorite angle, not because of me, but because you guys can see there it is. You can see the D. The old Detroit Tigers D there. Got to represent. Hey.
Get up for the St. Louis Cardinals. You're outnumbered, bro.
Hey, I did have the pleasure of going to a Cardinals game not too long ago. I got to watch them get beat by the Tigers, though, so it was.
Where's Amy
awesome.
at? I seen her post about that. Where's she at? Is she in here?
Yeah.
Shane,
it was a good time.
Okay. I think we're good. Right. Yeah, I think we're good, man.
All right. Let's kick it off then. Let's get into this. I'm excited to dive into some of the things. So, all right. Welcome, everybody, to the Locker Room Live. I'm Jeff Roth. This is Tyler.
What up?
Feller. And we're here, and we're going to talk about some struggles in youth ministry, because if you've been in youth ministry, if you've been a student pastor, you've been a volunteer, you've been involved in youth ministry for one day or 60 years, there's no doubt that you've faced some struggles. So we're going to hit on that today.
Absolutely.
And we're looking forward to digging into it. Hopefully we'll get some valuable information for you and learn from each other. So we're diving into that and to equip and resource you for maximum impact. So Tyler, as we talk about struggles in youth ministry, let's just start off and maybe I'll throw it to you and you can share with us maybe one of your big struggles or one of the things that you faced and we'll bounce back.
I think number one for me, one of the biggest struggles that I had in student ministry and just getting started, it often begins in a very introspective way. And youth ministry and ministry in general shouldn't be about yourself, but for me, it definitely had a lot of dark sides growing inside of me, just as a young person that had been through a lot of stuff. And so I had to really get to a place where I allowed God to take full control of my heart. And so what this looked like in student ministry was, obviously always very prayerful about whatever I did, but in moments of insecurity for me, it would definitely be an expectation of how I wanted the students maybe to respond, or an expectation of what I wanted the attendance to be. And it really sent me on a roller coaster emotionally, because I would have expectations that sometimes wouldn't be met, or I would have expectations that would be far exceeded. And either way, my emotions are either way up high or way down low. And whenever I really look at the gospel and look about what Jesus did and who he was a very stable, very secure man. And so if Jesus led in a very stable and a very secure way, he didn't lead a roller coaster ride, then I shouldn't be on a roller coaster ride. And so one of the things that I had to do in my life that was a huge struggle for me was get to a place where my job was to get up on the stage and say exactly what it was that God wanted me to say, and not care about what anybody felt, and not care about how they responded, and not care about how many people were in the audience. And so that was very, very, very hard to do.
That is a struggle. There's no doubt about it. I remember being in a youth ministry in Francisco, Indiana, and I had one night where I had 0 kids show up. Anybody ever had 0 kids show up?
Loser. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, I know, right? I'm like, what in the world? Did they cancel church and not tell me? So it was like, that was one of those nights that was so like deep for me, where I was just like, I was sitting there in the youth room by myself, and I was like, maybe I shouldn't even be a youth pastor. Maybe I should, I'm still in college. Maybe I can change my major right now and, find something else to do. But then there's
He's
other
like,
nights.
Jeff, how you doing tonight? Doing good.
Yeah, I had
multiple
deep
personalities, bro.
I got a little bipolar that night. But I'm fairly normal now. But I also had another night, though, I think of like on the flip side of things, one of the nights when I was youth pastor in Mount Vernon, where we had a guest speaker come in, and we had this big event planned, and we had over 30 kids come to Christ, and like the expectations on that side, like you said, were boom, through the roof, and I didn't even know what to do with that. I was like, it was kind of both sides. There's a struggle there, and you have to be careful to weigh yourself, not to get too high in the highs or too low in the lows, but to continue to work your plan.
Yeah. So let me tell you a little bit of a how-to, or what I had to do internally in order to try to fix this emotionally for me. Number one, I had to be really honest with myself. I had to subject myself to people in my life that I could trust to speak into me in a loving and a caring way, and I had to receive what they were saying to me. So I had to hear things, that were hard to hear. But in the end, I will receive and hear things that are hard to hear if it means that more people are going to be impacted by the gospel. Because when we're stable and when we are steady, then God's able to trust us with more people. And so whenever I'm able to do that, that was the first thing. I had to be secure in who I was as a person. And then the second thing was I had to build systems that would safeguard me, at least in the beginning, as I was trying to put myself into a place where I didn't care so much about maybe the numbers or how students responded. And so this is what I did. I was able to create a system, AKA these 4 ladies up front were able to help, facilitate and create the system of whenever we did things like how many people did we have show up, and how did the students respond? How many people filled out a card today that said they want to serve, if that was like, the action item for us? And what they would do is they would take all that information and they would write it all down and turn it into all kinds of people. And we had a system where we would track people, and I touched none of that stuff. I knew none of that stuff unless I had to go through like 4 different people to figure out what some of that stuff was. And it was important that it had to be that way for a season while I was really conditioning my heart to be exactly what it was that God wanted me to be, which is a man of God, to stand up and say what it is that he wants me to say. And so sometimes God will lay on my heart a message that I wouldn't think would connect with students, or that I would walk away feeling like, oh, they absolutely love Tyler. Okay, I didn't need that. I couldn't be like that for God to do what he wanted to do in our ministry. And you know what's so crazy about that, Jeff, is that I found out that sometimes the messages that I didn't want to preach, the messages that I'm like, God, why do I have to do this right now, are the messages that were the most impactful in our student ministry. And so God wants to do what God wants to do, and I am challenging you as leaders and me, myself, continually to be the kind of people to literally just be a message carrier for him. That's it. Just be a message carrier for him, and forget about whatever selfish ambition you may have on the inside. Students don't have to like you. You don't have to be their friend. You're there to be a spiritual authority in their life and to provide boundaries for you and for them. And if you do that, I promise you they are going to love you and you're going to be able to speak into their life. And like we talk about, and it's the mission of our movement right now to make maximum impact.
Yeah. And I think the core of that and what you were kind of hitting on there is, like, it starts in you. Like, the times I got the most lost in student ministry or in ministry in general now is when I get lost spiritually, when I start getting a little shallow in my time with God, when I start spending a little less time reading the Bible, spending less time in the Word, spending less time listening to podcasts or whatever it is to spiritually grow me and develop me. When I start doing that, then things start getting a little shallow in my relationship. And one of the podcasts that we talked about leading out of the overflow, and we talked about how important it is for you not to be teaching your kids, not to be reading just to teach them that week, but to be reading the Bible, to be studying the Word, to be going through books, podcasts, whatever it is, teachings, so that when you're sharing with the kids, you're sharing out of the overflow. You're sharing stuff that, man, this just came in my life this week, and so I'm not giving you all that I have. I'm just giving you what's best for you right now. And so some of you guys out there, you're going out there and you've got no ammo at all. And that's because you need to fill up first. You need to fill up your cup. In that spiritual song, fill my cup, Lord, let it overflow. You know, all that stuff.
I didn't
you
know
need
that,
to fill
church.
your cup up.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I was waiting for you to sing because you wanted to sing all these songs earlier.
I don't know that song.
But now you don't want to sing when
I'm a
the
little
spotlight's
teapot.
on. But what we need to do is we need to fill ourselves up so that we're not giving them the bottom of the cup, but we're giving them the overflow. We're giving them what they really need. And if we can do that, then we're doing it, and we're leading in a healthy way. And we're going to avoid burnout. We're also not just going to have good ideas, but we're going to have God ideas. We're going to have ideas that aren't just, hey, I was just thinking and I'm creative. But we're going to have ideas like Tyler said, like, this don't make sense to me. I don't feel like I should talk about this tonight. But God, I feel like, is really pushing me to do this. And so you have those God ideas, and that's where maximum impact happens, is in the God ideas.
Absolutely. And so whenever you were talking, and it reminded me of a conversation that you and I had before, and it may help you give some insight maybe into what your biggest struggle or personal struggle was in ministry. But Jesus came and he paved a way for us that was crystal clear. And unfortunately, in the 2,000 years it's been since he's been on this earth, there's all kinds of stuff that has grown up in that path that Jesus has made between us and him. And so our job as a leader is to do exactly what he says and shepherd ourselves in a way that we can go through and clear all the weeds that are out in front. And sometimes we have to lay gravel down. Sometimes we have to pour pavement down. Sometimes we got to get the mixers out and lay an entire 4-lane highway down so that we can lead students where they need to go, which is directly to Jesus. What you're talking about, though, is it's impossible for us to lead students to some place that we've never been. And if we're not secure in who we are, our students are not going to be secure in who they are. Powerful, but we need to be able to do that. And so I know you and I have had some conversations about just some different struggles. Jeff and I talk a lot just as friends, and maybe you can give some insight for some folks of just what was it? What's the struggle that you had?
I think one of my biggest struggles was just having an identity. And I think that's something I still struggle with today. Not just a personal identity, but like kind of a ministry identity. I think philosophy of ministry is a great idea for you to have a philosophy of ministry, to say, this is what I want to accomplish, or this is how I think that our youth ministry should function. And then also, along with your philosophy, to have a plan. So you got 2 P's there. You have philosophy of ministry, what do I want to accomplish, but also a plan, how am I going to make it happen? And I think a lot of times what gets going on, and what happened to me, is I get lost in the day-to-day. I get lost in, I've got so much going on. I've got so many things to happen. I've got so many kids that are calling, or they need something, or they want something, or they got to go somewhere and they need a ride, or they're always in the midst. I mean, if you have more than one kid in your student ministry, somebody's always in a crisis, right? Somebody's always got something that they need your ear on. And so what happens is we can get so overwhelmed that we just kind of start going from day to day. We just kind of start going from here to there. And we looking at every conference and every retreat and every concert that comes to town. And we're just saying, I'll just go there. I'll just do this. And so we're going to all these good things. But while we go to all these good things, we kind of sacrifice the great because we don't have a plan. So all we're doing is we're just getting these kids to go to stuff all the time. But are we discipling them? Are they taking their next steps? And so that's what a philosophy and a plan of ministry, I believe, will do for you, is to say, this is how I believe ministry should be done. And there can be different philosophies. That's the cool thing about churches. Like I know even the church that you work at, the church that I work at, like we have different philosophies of ministry.
I love the church you work at. Shout out to Risen. I'm OR. I'm original Risen. Love you guys. So while you're talking, you reminded me, Pastor Brandon, whenever he was speaking at National Youth Conference last year, he challenged us. He said, do you guys want to be part of a moment? Or do you guys want to be a part of a movement? It's exactly what you're talking about right then and there. I've actually had an opportunity just over the past couple of months to be working with organizations and pastors and leaders outside of our denomination, pastors and leaders that are leading in churches of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. And these are pastors and leaders that have helped create processes that it doesn't matter what the philosophy of ministry is, but it is something that helps create a plan that is based off of the Great Commission to help maximize the kingdom impact. And so this is stuff that he's talking about a plan. These are resources that we've been able to put on the locker room, gbnyc.org/the locker room. You guys can see the plan that I created for Warehouse whenever I was a student pastor there. It's on there. You guys can just click it and download it. If you have any questions at all about that plan, feel free. You can message us on our GBNYC Facebook page. If you message my personal Facebook page, I will do my best to get back with you. Not always happen, but email us, tyler.feller@generationchurch.me.
And you can hit me up at jeff@wearerisen.org.
You can also email Tyler@wearerisen.org. I have that email address.
When I started working at Risen, Tyler was like, hey, make sure that they don't get rid of my email address. That's my main one.
I love it. So I think, I feel good so far about the conversation.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the conversation, and I wonder if maybe our conversation sparked maybe something in you, maybe some questions. And so we've got a mic out here.
Yeah,
and
Todd's the mic man.
Give it up for Todd Luke.
Todd does so much that you guys don't know.
Todd hides in this cubbyhole room over here and makes everything happen. And so we appreciate Todd so much. This is the easiest thing Todd's going to do all weekend is run this mic around. So if you've got a question, I want you to throw your hand up. We want to get it in the mic so that we can have it recorded. Anybody at all?
Oh, right I see here. I see one.
Guy with the cool hat, cool beard. Yes, your question.
Hey, so how do you guys measure success if you're not going to use numbers for success? Are you thinking about, are they walking with Christ in 5 years, or is it about what you do, in a given night, or what?
Well, there's a philosophy. Here's something maybe to make you ponder on. Not all things that are healthy grow, but all things that are healthy grows. So you can grow without being healthy, but it's just going to die and wither away. But if it's healthy on the inside, then it's going to grow. And so, always, 100% of the time. And so what I mean by that is you begin to measure student ministry in terms of kingdom impact. So do you have more students being disciple makers? And what I mean by that, do you have a group of students so fired up about Jesus that whenever they're at school, they're having a group on their own? They're exhibiting it on their own. It's out of their own desire. This happened whenever I was a student pastor. They started a movement at their school called the Unashamed Movement. They invited me to come. There's like 30 freshman boys in the cafeteria in the morning having a Bible study that they initiate on themselves. That's crazy to think about that they're doing that, but they're making a difference in their school because so many boys just having a Bible, to me, I'm overwhelmed when I think about so many boys having a Bible study at their school. They're making a difference on their own. I didn't tell them to do that. I wanted to come to the first one. They didn't invite me. They're like, no, you need to wait till next week. We got some other things lined up. I'm like, seriously? This is so awesome right now. So there's one way that we measure it. We started doing an offering at our student ministry. So how do we teach generosity? I believe that God's favor rests on generous people. I'm very generous. 10% is a baseline. For me, it's more like 30, 40%. I'm just like, and I'm like the biggest tightwad you'll ever see. So I'm like, flip-flops, if they're not 50 cents, I'm not buying them, okay? So I'm a tightwad. But in our student ministry, we were able to raise in 9 months through offering, us teaching about it, students giving over $2,500 that we gave 100% of it away. That's incredible. God's favor rests on us because we're making disciples. And we were healthy on the inside, and we grew as a result of it. And so that's how we measured it. We're not saying how many students are coming because we don't care about how many students are coming. Numbers matter. Data is your best friend, but it's not your only friend. And so there's people that need to be monitoring it and measured in it, and it can definitely signal if something's unhealthy. But there's so many different things that you can measure to make sure that what you're doing is making an impact. are the students living out exactly what it is that you're teaching? So for us, we wanted to teach on love. Are the kids loving each other? That's the big deal. Are they loving each other? So that was our deal. That was our philosophy. We just want the kids to feel loved. We believe that God is love, and this world is broken and hurt and dying. And the Bible says, Jesus said this, in the last days, the love of mankind is going to grow cold. And so we felt like if we can create an environment of love, then we would have people running to our ministry. And that's exactly what happened. And so we measured it. Are they loving people? Are they giving? Are they being generous? Are they living out this discipleship process away from us and in their own identity? A lot of times in student ministry, students' identity with God is built through you to God, and we don't want that. We don't want this identity to go from them to you to God. How can you build it to where it's from them to God?
Direct connection.
Yeah.
No, I
Great
think
question.
those are all good words, and I think that he said that was their philosophy, and I think that goes back to that a little bit, philosophy and your plan. I think when you set that up, you have goals, and then you can monitor those wins. Like those students having a Bible study on their own, minus Tyler, was a win. And so you look at those things, and you say, that's a win. And I think it's important to keep track of the wins and to know, like, this is a win, because there's going to be days where you might go a little while, and you might feel like things are not going well.
So actually,
but
over
you can
time,
say,
your definition of a win can also change according to your philosophy and what you're teaching all
Yeah.
the time as well.
definitely.
And what you celebrate gets elevated. So for us, we celebrated the mess out of generosity. With a single swipe, we're able to sponsor a kid in Honduras. With a single swipe, we're able to take care of people that are going to prom. With a single swipe, we're able to provide, I don't know how many turkeys to homeless families in our community through our student ministry, 40 or something like that, with a single swipe. What we were celebrating began to get elevated. One kid, and I knew that we had got him, he's here at this conference. His name is Ding 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 Ding. Just kidding, he's Asian and that's what I call him. But his family.
Well, let's just stop for a second.
So hang on, let's stop the
Don't
recording
take
on
that
that.
back to
and
your youth ministry.
You can.
rewind that.
He's cool with it. His family owns like a nail salon, and so for him, I knew that he got it whenever he put a Taco Bell coupon in the offering plate, and then the next week it was a gift card. Like I knew, I'm like, this kid is getting it because he's starting to be generous. I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this coupon. I know what I'm gonna do with this gift card. I don't know. Great question.
thanks, man.
And feel free to talk to these four ladies. They are the brains behind the operations there. They will answer those questions for you too.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Anyone
Anybody,
else?
We got one right here. We got one at the front next.
My husband and I, we volunteer for the middle school youth group, and then we
Hold
have
on. That's awesome that you would volunteer.
Praise the Lord. Round of applause for volunteering.
Thank you, Jesus, for people like you.
But one thing that we struggle with is how do you balance having a family, working full-time, and being a youth leader?
Amen. Get some amens on that one? That's right. Thank you, Jesus. I'll tell you what, like, I wish my mom's here at this conference. I wish she was in here right now. When I was growing up, my mom and dad were our youth leaders, and they both had full-time jobs, and they were running the church van, 2.5 hours before Wednesday night, 2.5 hours after Wednesday night, doing all that. So I have, like, so much respect for all of you out there who are not working, full-time or even part-time. You're just straight-up volunteers at your church. I've got so much respect for all of you. So the balance of that, I mean, that's hard. That's tough stuff. The first thing I would say is the most important thing that you can give your students is a healthy example in you. Now, I'm not just talking about your own spiritual life, but I'm talking about you. If you and your husband are both involved, I'm talking about your marriage. I'm talking about how you guys relate and conversate with them. And so they need to see a healthy example in you guys. And so what does that have to do with balance? Well, that means that sometimes the best thing that you can do for your youth group is to maybe not do that activity so that you can have that date night that you haven't had in 2-3 months. You know what I mean? That 2-3 months, it goes by fast without a date night. But I'm a big proponent of date nights and quality time with your spouse and your kids. And my wife is the best at making sure that I stop taking advantage of them when I start to do that. And I say that in all honesty. She lets me know when I am about to cross the line or when my schedule's getting too crazy or when I've not been home enough, that type of thing. And so I don't know if one of you kind of lean that way, But if one of you lean that way, I would give them the permission to be the watchdog over your family time, because somebody's got to guard it. Because if nobody guards it, if nobody guards your family time, your personal time with you and your spouse, you and your kids, then it won't be there, because it'll get ate up in youth ministry, in any ministry, because people will take it.
Yeah. Quick question: what church are you guys at?
Otter
Okay.
Creek.
Tell me how many people in the church as a whole. Like a 140, 150 range? Okay.
How many volunteers do you have besides you working in the youth? You're at
Okay.
just
So-
the two of you together?
So like the family thing for me wasn't necessarily in the picture, but whenever I first took my first original Risen, whenever I was there, shout out to you guys over here, holla. Okay, whenever I was there, I was working full time at a school. I was also coaching middle school baseball, and I was coaching middle school basketball. I was coaching high school basketball, and so I was doing all that and leading a student ministry that had a lot of students coming. So we had maybe sometimes like 90, 100 students coming, and the church had like 180, 200 people in it. So for us, that I had to learn how to delegate and be okay with delegating the responsibilities and knowing that life also happens in rhythms. So for me, it's like, hey, I have like 2 weeks that I'm going to be really focused on basketball, and so those 2 weeks, I'm not really going to be that involved with the student ministry. But then whenever it's spring break and I don't really have anything on with basketball, then I'm going to switch modes and do a rhythm of being really involved with the student ministry. I'll tell you this, that student ministry is not successful without people that I was able to delegate to and were able to take ownership of it.
Yeah, that's one thing. I know it's just you two there, but where I'm at in my church, I'm not in the youth, I'm in our communications department, and I've had to bring people into that to help me and, like you said, delegate the job responsibilities over to other people. You've got to bring more people in with you to help you create that space that you can have that, fulfilling family life. And as Jeff said, you've got to model that in front of your kids.
Real quick, too, and we'll hit another question. I think we had one up here. A couple things I just want to add to that. When he's talking about volunteers, he earlier said what you celebrate, people gravitate to. When you get volunteers,
Kind
if
of
you
what I
have
said.
any volunteers, celebrate that.
Yeah.
Celebrate that, because then people are gravitated toward it. And another thing I would say, just real quick, too, I don't want to dwell too long, but priorities are a big thing. That's one of the things my mom always talked to me about, priorities. And so for me, like my personal relationship with God is number one, my wife, my kids, my job at the church. Prioritize and then adjust your time accordingly. When my wife and I got married, I was youth pastor at the time, and I was playing 3 nights a week. I was playing softball in different leagues. Wednesday night, I had student ministry. Sunday morning, Sunday night. And so it wasn't very long before my wife helped me understand that I needed to look at my priority list and find out where softball ranked on that. And so, we kind of slowly peeled that apart and got down to currently 0 nights a week. But I'm not saying you have to quit all those hobbies and stuff, but I'm saying you just got to prioritize. And I had to say, look, I know that my student ministry is important. I know that my wife is more important. And so I had to figure out, where does all this fall in? Where does softball fall in? Question over here. Somebody have one? I thought I saw a hand. Others, if not, there's
Mr.
one
Steve
right.
Naff looks like he has a question. How much money does it take to lead a student ministry? No, just kidding.
Millions.
They're
No,
worth it.
I want to relate to that very quickly, because I'm older than anyone else here. Understand that if you try to take that leadership position and don't let anyone else into it, you're creating a culture, and those kids will think there's only 2 people that can run our ministry ever. And the more people you invite to it, the more people they will see takes this, and then that will encourage them to be a part of it as well in the future, because we're building leaders.
That's a great word from Steve Naff is the leader of what we call our General Baptist Investment Fund. So shout out to him. We love him.
GBIF.
But that's a good word from him. And I've had an awesome opportunity to travel to more churches than I can even count. And one of the things that I've seen of churches that are really thriving, the thing that I noticed, the marquee standpoint of these churches are churches that empower the most people. Whenever you have more people empowered, more ministries being done, And it doesn't matter. I have to live by this phrase, and it's so hard for me. It's one of those dark sides that I talk about of just wanting to be compulsive, and I have like a standard that I want everything at, and I have to get to the place in my heart where I'm like, if it can be 50% as good as what my standard is, which my standard is always extremely high, then I have to be able to let it go. And so that's exactly what it's talking about. When more people are empowered and when more people are moving forward, more people are reached. So do we have another question? Oh, I like that hand. Like, shot it there real fast.
Hi, my name's Carrie.
Hey, Carrie.
Hi. I'm from Vertical Church in Fort Branch, Indiana.
All right.
Yeah. We have our student ministry is middle school and high school, and the majority of it is middle school. And so kind of what this gentleman was talking about and how you track, you guys seem like in your ministries, you were really available to your kids.
Sure.
And so, how available are you? How do you monitor? Okay, so I'm growing, but how do you know you're growing? If you don't see their lives, how do you look into their life?
That's a great question. Absolutely love it because it's able to allow us to hit on something that's really important to my heart. For me, it begins ultimately with your leadership and who you have underneath of you. And so one of the ways that we had structured our system at the warehouse where I was at before, number one, there's a couple different realities that come to play in a student ministry. Just so you know, when students hit age 16, it's hard to get them in student ministry. Don't sweat it if they're not coming. It's not something that you did. They're 16. They have to have gas for their car, and they need a job to pay for the insurance on their car. And some of them are having to pay for their car payment, and there's homework, and for whatever, it's okay. I mean, I get that. But here's what happens. As a student pastor, the age that you're pouring into the most is the cap going to be the age. So anytime that I started a student ministry at Risen and both at Warehouse, and I always started with people that were sophomores, like 15 years old, or those are the people that I wanted to hang out with because I know that would kind of be the cap. Once they're a junior, they're 16, they're not coming. So inside of that, we're looking at a window maybe between 6th or 7th grade all the way up to 10th grade. The 11th and 12th graders that stick are awesome and give them a ton of responsibilities, and they will run with it and do amazing things, right? But inside of that, the way we structured at Warehouse was every single volunteer that came, I would meet with them, or Ashley in the front row would meet with some of them. And what we would do is we would say, give them like a questionnaire, go over all of our thing. We had a really tough standard for people that would serve in our student ministry, but a part of that standard was saying, hey, we're going to assign you to like an age and a gender. So we'll assign somebody to like middle school girls. And so for a season, it shifted. For a season, they would be in charge of middle school girls. So they would be going, leading a small group for middle school girls. They would be building relationships with the middle school girls. They were available for those middle school girls. I would tell them like, hey, I need to see you at least at one of their games. If they have a game going on, you need to be involved in what they're doing. And so they're going to the games and being involved. So you don't necessarily have to be available, but your team can be available. And when you spread the availability out we had 49 volunteers whenever I was there, amongst 49 volunteers, then more stuff is getting done. And because there's 49 different people that are pouring into different people. Now, the 49 people didn't show up every week. It's kind of like a rotation thing. But those 49 people are assigned an age and a gender, and so they're going to that. I was assigned middle school boys. And so there's a ton of middle school boys here that are from that student ministry that you'll see like coming up and, whatever, trying to high-five me or whatever, because that was who I was pouring into. So if you've seen me someplace, it was at a middle school basketball game, or I would go to some of the middle schools in that city and, hang out at lunchtime or whatever with them. You didn't see me at the high school.
I think that's a good idea, Tyler. Just not trying to do it all, but to have people in your group that are specifically responsible
assigned
for other. And some people honestly are just better with. Some people are better with middle school kids. God bless them. And some people are better with high school students, and whatever it is. And so just kind of finding their niche, finding who they connect with best, and that could change for seasons. But.
And so then the growth that I would notice came from the leaders of those age groups. So then I have some reporting and tracking mechanisms that I use now at the church I'm at, but before I just would have like a conversation like, how do you think things are going? Your group, are you guys having a lot of people show up to group? Is it down? If it's down, what can we do to make sure that that we're really homing in on this discipleship process? And so the conversation shifts to you teaching the group leader or the age leader what that health looks like. So then you're not the only one that carries the weight of what a healthy student ministry that grows looks like, but you're able to teach it into a group of people. So I think does that help answer some of that stuff? Okay.
All right, let's try to get
one thing. I think it gets into that team mentality again. Don't try to do it all yourself. Try to bring as many people into it as possible, and that'll help you also build boundaries around your family as well. Again, it goes into the last point.
And I think that's hard, especially with new volunteers or other volunteers. It's hard to help them understand. So that may be one of the first things you want to work with your volunteer base on, is helping them understand the value that comes from them building relationships with other people. And they can say, oh, that's your job, or you're the youth pastor, or whatever. But you have to understand it's best for the students. It's not about me, but it's best for the students if they have a deep connection with somebody else, someone that they call a friend or that they can come to. So make sure. Let's get two more questions.
Really good. Yeah.
Two more. One in the back and one in the middle here.
This is like the phalange wave, in case you guys are wondering. I don't know what that means.
Everything that I've read and studied that says when you're developing new ministries, youth ministries, that you don't want to divide your congregation, you want to unite your congregation. So how do you develop that new cutting-edge ministry that's going to appeal to the younger crowd without alienating some of your older crowd?
What are you defining as older crowd? Older youth, or just the entire congregation older? The entire congregation older.
Okay, so we're talking about a traditional church service,
Traditional style church or traditional minded people.
and then we're talking about having a youth ministry or student ministry that is kind of upbeat, contemporary, whatever you want to call it. I can speak from personal experience, and then I'll let Tyler hit on it too. I know when I was in Mount Vernon, that's where we were at. I mean, we had a very traditional Sunday morning service, but our Wednesday night we had a student band, and it was student aimed. I think your services have to have a goal. Like, who are we aiming at here? Now, on Wednesday night, I'm aiming at students, and so when I'm aiming at students, I'm going to do stuff that I think will attract, grow, develop, engage students, because that's what I want to do. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. And so I need adults that are helping me there, that understand that our mission is not to do things that make our older crowd happy, but our mission is to engage our students this night. Now, I think that Tyler, and he can hit on this, but I think he did a really good job with helping the Sunday morning crew buy into the ministry that was happening on Wednesday night, helping them to see it, value it, to understand its importance, and they took pride in it. And I think that happened in Mount Vernon when I was there too. Like, our Sunday morning crew, even though we were singing drastically different songs and different styles of worship, they understood that we're still accomplishing the same mission. We're still doing the same thing. We're accomplishing the goal. And they took pride in the fact that they had a student ministry that was reaching however many kids on a Wednesday night. And so I think that it's less about what you do, and it's more about helping change the mindsets, in my opinion, of the people in the older crew, to help them understand that just because this is different, it doesn't mean that they're different. It's the same purpose that we're working to accomplish.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would love to chat with you further about that afterwards if you'd want to talk. Whenever I was at Risen Church, which it's kind of like a mix, I would say, between a traditional style and more of a contemporary, style. But a lot of the people that go to the church are older folks that have been coming there and been there for a very long time. Really pillars of the church, started some of the foundation of the church. And whenever I got there, I was a thug, and I wore a hat, and they thought I was in middle school, and even though I was a youth pastor, and I was riding around on skateboards.
So you're not a thug anymore?
I try not to be, but sometimes.
But you still wear a hat.
Still wear a hat today because I had a bad hair day anyways. That's never mind. So, but how can I be like that? But that's me connecting with the students. But how can I be like that, but also win the trust of the congregation? And the way that I was able to do that in a lot of ways was building relationships with them where they were taking ownership of it. So one of the things that I did, I wanted to always celebrate the success stories of what God was doing inside of that ministry. And so anytime we had a student saved, I would write down their names on a piece of paper, and I would go and take it to the ladies in the church. Sometimes I have 15 little pieces of paper, and I would say, these 3 people got saved last week, and I really need you to pray for them. And I'll go to the next lady. I have 6 players on my basketball team I'm coaching coming to the ministry right now, and they don't know Jesus, but they really need to. It'd make my job at school a lot easier if they did. Will you please pray for them? And you know what happened? They started to love these kids. My basketball team, there was a group of ladies that I didn't even ask them to. They started making meals for my kids every single Wednesday, just for my basketball team. I would show up, it's like a gourmet meal. They were bought in because they were praying for the student ministry, and they were serving the student. They didn't come to student ministry, they didn't like hip hop, okay? They didn't want to see me like that. They didn't want to see me jump up in the air like that. But they absolutely loved what was going on. And they were able to embody and realize that a lot of times you only get one night with students. Broken families means divorced families, means split custody, means one night of the week. And they knew that, and they understood that, and they loved what was happening in the broken lives of these students.
Okay, we got just 2 minutes. We're a little over time right now.
All right. We have one more hand right here. Let's do that one, and then we'll
Does that help?
see where we're at.
Okay.
My question is, how do you take all this that you guys are telling us about and apply it to like one child? We're from a small church, we're out in the middle of nowhere, and it's hard to take all these big plans and lessons and stuff and apply it to one, maybe 2 kids if they bring a friend, but it's really hard to try and know where to take them, and because you're sitting in a room with one kid and you get the same kid maybe twice a month, and that's all you got. How do you, I get stuck.
What area are you from? What city? What town?
Middle of nowhere, Illinois.
I grew up in Elsinore, Missouri. You probably never heard of it.
We're Blueford, Illinois. We're not too far from Mount Vernon, Illinois. We're 30 minutes from a town, and we have a small grade school. The kids have to go over a half hour to get to high school. Yeah. And so we're sitting out here in the middle of nowhere, and we have a couple kids. We're a small church, but it's just hard to take all these big plans and all these big lessons and force them, it's like you're force feeding them down their throats sometimes. You're giving them the whole meal when they just want to bite.
I can definitely see how you can feel
how do we do
overwhelmed
that?
with some of the stuff and come in here like, oh my goodness, so many ideas. Jesus had 12 people that followed him, but you know what? He took 3 people to the top of the mountain. The average student ministry size in America is 11 students. Jesus chose to disciple 3 students. And if Jesus only was discipling 3 people on his own, then I don't think I could do that. I don't think if Jesus could do 3, I don't think I'm up to his standard. I don't think I could do 3. But I promise you this, if God put one student in my life, if that's all it was, I would pour my heart, my soul, my passion, my energy, my love into that one student. And whenever I did that, God said, I trusted you with the small, I'm going to give you more. When you have more passion, energy, love, discipling them, trusted you with the small, I'm going to give you more. And more is different. More doesn't mean 500 people in a room. More can mean that person is going out and now they're making a difference. Yeah. So we had when I was serving at Genesis Church, there was a counselor there. He has an office at the church, actually inside of our student ministry building, which is really cool. And he's like the world's most encouraging guy. Would always just come up and say random encouragement to me in a way that I understood, because my mind is really analytical sometimes. But I don't even know why he came up and said this to me, but maybe he sensed kind of the journey that I was on. But he said, Tyler, I want you to know this, that if you take off in an airplane right here from West Plains, Missouri, and you're wanting to go to Los Angeles, you can take off and go to Los Angeles. But if you take off and you have just 1 degree of difference, you'll land in San Francisco. And he's like, when you're in the air, when you're still flying over Missouri, you don't realize that you're 1 degree different. It takes a long time before you realize that you're that 1 degree difference. He's like, that's what student ministry is. You don't know the impact that you're having in that 1 degree of difference. You don't know because you can't see it. But years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, that impact, that one student that's coming, they're going to be deeply impacted by the words that you've given them.
Yeah, that's good. So I think you have a great opportunity with that one student, and I would cherish that, and I would relish that, and I would develop a relationship with them as best you can. And then also, like Tyler said, they have relationships, and I think just allow God to, when you pour into her, she pours, or him, they pour into their friends, and then it continues. You're making an impact. There's no doubt about it. I want to say this before we close. I was talking to the crew last night before we started the worship service, and I'm humbled. 100% humbled. that you leaders decide to bring your students to the General Baptist National Youth Conference. I mean, for me, it is amazing to see that you guys who are in the trenches every day, every week, every Wednesday, whatever it is, there's so many things that you could take your students to, so many camps or conferences or concerts or amusement parks. I mean, there's so many things that you could do with your students. But for you to bring them here this weekend, some of you took off work to be here this weekend. You guys are amazing. Like, and I don't say this in like a silly way, but like, you guys are heroes, and you need to be celebrated. And I just want to let you know that I appreciate you guys so much. So thank you guys so much for being here. Why don't you give yourselves a round of applause?
Well, thank you, folks, for hanging out with us today at this session of The Locker Room. Be sure to check us out, gbnyc.org/The Locker Room, or we are on Facebook, GBNYC.